All right, outdoor gear students, today we are going to be talking about water. So water procurement. As you know, and what we've talked about a couple times now, is that water is one of your most urgent needs in a survival situation. Yes, we talked about how shelter is important, and it's one of the first things that you should be working on in a survival situation. But we do know that we only have 3 days to go without water, so it is one of our most urgent needs. To function effectively, you must replace the fluids of your body that your body the fluid that your body loses. Okay, so through sweat, through exertion, just through natural body loss, we lose fluids. So you need to be replacing those fluids regularly. And so you need to establish an adequate supply of water, and it needs to be clean water, or you need to be able to clean that water effectively, which we'll talk about. If you do not have a container to store water in, such as like a canteen, a water bottle, or a cup, anything like that, you need to improvise. Like we've talked about so many times in our class before. Improvise, improvise, improvise. Can you use a tarp? Can you fashion that in some way to make like a cup of some sort? Okay. Improvise, improvise, improvise. All right. So some water sources. Really, almost any environment has water present to some degree. Even some of those extreme environments that you wouldn't always think of having water present, and which we'll talk about on the following slide, does have water present. There is heavy dew. Okay, so in the early mornings, when we were talking about shelters, how we talked about how the ground sucks our body temperature and how heavy dew settles. Okay, that heavy dew can even provide water for us. So how you can obtain water from that, you can tie rags or tufts of fine grass around your ankles, shuffle around through that dew-covered grass before the sunrise, because if you do it after the sunrise, what's going to happen? It's going to evaporate, right? Then you can go ahead and wring that water into a container. Is it going to be a lot of water? No, but in a survival situation, anything is better than nothing, right? Sometimes water will gather in the tree crotches or in rock crevices. And again, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, you always need to purify water before drinking it. And we'll talk about why that's important here in just a moment. So in some of those environments where you wouldn't always think of water being present, but actually there is, for example, in the frigid areas, how you can obtain water would be the snow and ice. All right, but what you need to do is you would need to melt that snow and ice and then purify it. If you don't melt it before you ingest it, it's going to reduce your body temperature, and then you have to worry about hypothermia. When you are at sea, okay, yes, you have the sea available to you. However, you would need to use a desalinator, okay, which is going to take the salt out of that water. All right, if you drink it without that, that salt is going to dehydrate you. Also, if there's rain, you can catch the rain in your tarps or other containers, and then you can go ahead and just drink that. At the beach, there is the ground. All right, you can dig a hole deep enough for allow water to seep in. You can get some rocks, build a fire, heat up the rocks, drop the hot rocks in the water, hold a cloth over it to absorb the steam, and then wring the water out from the cloth. So kind of time consuming, but it is available. And then of course in the desert, in the valleys, in the low areas, wherever you find green vegetation, it's always important. Look around your environment. Look for the green growing plants. If you see something green growing, that will tell you that there is water present somewhere. Okay, things that you do not want to substitute water for. Alcoholic beverages. All right, alcoholic beverages are going to dehydrate your body and they're going to cloud your judgment. Urine. Okay, urine contains harmful body waste and about 2% of it is salt. Now, in extreme situations, you can use your urine. However, if you do not obtain water after ingesting your urine one time, all right, if you were to ingest it a second time around, it's going to be extra concentrated and it's going to contain even more harmful body waste. So you can only drink it one time, and then you need to make sure that you do have some water before you were to drink it again. That's really only in extreme situations. The next one would be blood. Your body considers blood to be a food source, so therefore it's going to require even more body fluids to digest the blood. Also, it's salty. Again, that's going to dehydrate you. And then seawater, which we already talked about, how that makes up a lot of, or has a lot of salt in it. About 4% of it is salt. So water purification, we talked about how that's important. We need to purify water before we ingest it. Now, rainwater that is collected in clean containers is usually pretty safe for drinking, so you wouldn't need to purify it before you drink. But you do need to purify water from lakes, ponds, swamps, springs, rivers, streams, all of that. Okay, so methods for purifying. You can use some water purification tablets. So this would be if you were planning on being out in the wilderness ahead of time. All right, you'd have something on your person with you. All right, and then for that you just follow the package directions. You can use drops of iodine in a container of clear water. All right, again, that would take some purposeful planning. All right, having that iodine on you. If the container is full of cloudy or cold water, use 10 drops of iodine. Then you would want to let that container sit for about 30 minutes before drinking. You can also use a couple drops of chlorine bleach. Again, you would need to have that on you. That wouldn't be something you would probably have on you in a survival situation. Again, let it stand for 30 minutes. If it's cloudy or cold, let it sit for 60. Boiling water. Boiling water is going to be your safest method to ensure that you are killing any and most bacteria. By drinking unpurified water, you may contract diseases or swallow harmful pathogens, and it can lead to potentially fatal waterborne illnesses. So let's talk about some water pathogens. These are the most prevalent pathogens found in most water sources throughout the world are Giardia, which causes Giardiasis, which is beaver fever. It is characterized by an explosive watery diarrhea, which is accompanied by severe cramps lasting 7 to 14 days. Or Cryptosporidium, which causes cryptosporidiosis. Like Giardia, except it's more severe and prolonged. It is there's no known cure except for time, so it just has to run its course. The diarrhea may be mild, but it can last from 3 days to 2 weeks. The only effective means to neutralize this, though, is boiling or using a commercial microfilter or reverse osmosis system. They have found that like the chemical treatments, like the iodine and the bleach, are not found to be 100% effective. So really, you don't want to rely on those resources necessarily. Some other pathogens continued. Some other diseases or organisms would be dysentery. Okay, again, it's going to be severe prolonged diarrhea with bloody stools, fever, and weakness. Cholera and typhoid. All right, cholera can cause profuse watery diarrhea, vomiting, leg cramps. Typhoid includes fever, headache, loss of appetite, constipation, and bleeding of the bowels. Hepatitis A causes diarrhea, abdominal pain, jaundice, and dark urine. Flukes. This is usually found in stagnant, polluted water. Usually found in tropical areas is where flukes are usually found. If you swallow blood flukes, they will bore into your bloodstream and they live as parasites and they will cause disease. And then we have leeches, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with leeches from around here. If you swallow a leech, it can hook onto your throat passage or inside your nose, and it will suck your blood and create a wound. And it can move to another area in your body, and each bleeding wound can become infected. So water filtration devices, that is what we are going to be working on for our next project. You would use a water filtration device if the water is muddy, stagnant, and foul-smelling. It's going to allow you to clear the water. It is not going to purify the water, okay? It's only going to make it more palatable, all right? So something that you can do, you can place it in a container and let it sit for 12 hours. Or you can put it through a water filtration system. Again, that is what we are going to be making. But please remember, this only makes it clear. It would still need to be purified. It is not safe even once it goes through the water filtration. It still needs to be purified. Okay, so to make a filtration system, you would place several centimeters or layers of filtering material such as sand, crushed rock, charcoal or cloth in a hollow log, or an article of clothing. Basically, again, just like what we talked about with shelters, anything you have available to kind of help catch some big materials, or even like the small particles that might be floating around in the water, would work. There is an example here in this picture. You can see they used a bottle. That's kind of common for what you students use in class for their examples. And you can see at the top they're using bigger materials such as rocks. And then as it gets lower into the bottom of the bottle, they're using finer materials. So it's going to catch those big materials at the top, and as it works its way down, it's going to catch those smaller materials until at the bottom of the bottle, hopefully it comes out clearer water. All right. And then there is an example video that I linked to this from like a 5-minute craft video where it shows a little example in like the first 30 seconds of the video. So that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be making a water filtration. You can get creative, use anything that you have around. I've had people use pieces of clothing such as a sock, a sleeve from a t-shirt. Like I said, I've had a lot of people use a water bottle before. I've had people use PVC pipe. So get creative, have fun, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with.